Hello everybody, it's Claire here from Sewing by Claire, and today we're going to do a little skill builder video which is going to be talking about sewing machines. Now if you already are a sewing machine addict or owner, then you may already have the features and all of the knowledge that you need, so if so, this video maybe isn't for you. But what I wanted to do was to address some common questions that we have from beginner sewists or those that may have bought themselves a very basic machine and are wanting to take it to the next stage but don't want to break the bank. And so I wanted just to have a quick chat about some of the different machines that are available, and but more so I'm not really wanting to talk about brands of machines. I'm more talking about features of machines that will take your stitching to the next level. So if you've ever watched any of my videos before, and I've got a channel called Sewing by Claire, and what I do is my videos are all aimed at beginner and improver sewists, and I'm not a speed sewer. It's not about get a project over and done with really quickly and move on to the next. What I like is to get a really good result so that I'm really proud of that project, and that's what I want to try and bring to all of my viewers as well and my subscribers is how to elevate your sewing to the next level. And of course, one of the tools that we use every single day in our sewing is either our hands or we use a machine. And as I say, it's just those features that I use that I now consider to be really a non-negotiable if you want to get a really good result. Now, I know some people are going to be shouting at the screen and say, so long as it makes a stitch, everything should be fine. And I do agree, but it's just little bits that I've found that I've come to love about a machine that I might use, and there are features that I would look for if I was buying a new one. And believe me, you can spend thousands on new machines, and I've got friends and I've been to workshops where the machines are £1,000, £1,500 each. And to my mind, it's not talking about that type of budget. I'm more at talking about the lower end of the budget, where you want a really good machine sewing machine that will do what you want it to do and will take you through the majority of your sewing. Now, if you bear in mind that I do quilting and I do dressmaking, I do doll making, I've done bag making, I've made curtains and blinds for myself, what else do I do on my machine? Do clothing alterations as well, so taking up trousers, altering sleeves on jackets, all of those things that I've done, and if any of those are things that you do then in your sewing life, then you may well find some of these tips helpful. As I say, it's just features that if you've got a particularly older machine that you've inherited, you may not realise these features exist. Or as I say, if you've had a more basic machine and you're looking to go to more of an intermediate machine, excuse me, then again, these are sort of the features that I would suggest you look for if you can, and if you've got some little bit of flexibility in your budget, because it really will stand you in good stead to take you further. And whilst my machine isn't all singing or dancing, I'd say it was probably an intermediate machine, then I don't actually feel a need to upgrade to another new, better, bigger and better. I think I will do in time, but in terms of being a workhorse, then the features that I've got on my machine, and I've had this machine in excess now of 5 to 6 years, I think, still going strong, still doing really well, and I really would be lost without it. So let me just turn the camera around and we'll have a look at the machine I've got, but more importantly, it's not about the make and it's not about the model, it's about the features that it's got in terms of the way that you can use it to then elevate your sewing. So anyway, I hope this video is going to be useful to somebody. So yeah, let me get started. Okay, so this is the machine that I use for all of my sewing with all of those disciplines that I've just said to you before. And so we can look at this. On first glance, it isn't the most complicated. I've not got lots and lots of decorative stitches. I've got a few buttonholes on here, but I probably only use maybe a quarter of these stitches. I do use the needle moving ones, and I use the triple stitch. I also use the zigzag stitch, and I use the 3-step zigzag stitch. But then I don't use many more. I use the blind edge stitch, I use 2 of the buttonhole stitches, and then generally I don't use many of these down here, although I have used the blanket stitch before for doing some applique. So as you can tell, I you know, I try to use as much as I can do on my machine for my projects, but you know, what I'm trying to demonstrate is that there's not tons and tons of stitches to sort of complicate things. So let's just start. So with this machine, we can see because it's got a readout here, then it's actually a digital machine, and it's computerised, and that's the name given to anything that's got this kind of electronic readout. So a more manual machine will have a dial that you have to turn, whereas with this one, I can press the button and the display changes. For some of the features that I recommend, you will need to go to a computerised machine in order to get some of these features. Some of them you can overcome without having those features on, but they're just the things that make life a little bit easier. So this is I would say, intermediate machine, because it takes you from the step up from the manual machine, where you've got all of your dials for changing your stitch width and your stitch length, which I do electronically here with the press of a button. It's not about the press of a button that's the issue, it's about some of the features that come on the machine. So let me explain some of those things. So one of the things that I've got, especially if you're a beginner sewist, is I would recommend you find a machine that has a speed control. So yes, you're quite right that you normally, like with when you're driving a car or a go-kart, you'll put your foot on the pedal, and the harder you put your foot on the foot pedal, the faster the machine will go. What this does, it's a bit like a speed limiter. So with this machine, I can then turn the speed right down on here, and it won't matter how much I put my foot down on my pedal, the machine will not go any faster than one stitch at a time. Let me get some spare fabric and I can just show you this. Hold on 1 second. Just put a piece of fabric into my machine, and if I now start to just use my foot pedal with my foot down slow, then it doesn't matter, I've got my foot right down to the floor on my pedal, and my machine will only take one stitch at a time. If I turn the speed up to the top and I put my foot down on the pedal as hard as I had it before, you'll see how fast it'll go. So it's a bit like a limiter. You can then use this. So this is particularly good if you've got a child who's learning to sew, or if somebody who's a bit scared of the machinery, because it doesn't matter then. You can control this for them and ask them not to touch that button, and you can make sure then that this is never going to snatch away with their piece of fabric and then cause them problems when they're sewing. So you can have it set at any speed in between, and you can get quite a nice stitch length going, but it just builds in some time for people when they're learning to sew to make sure that the machine doesn't snatch away at their fabric, and when they've got to learn that foot control, if perhaps they're not a driver or they're not old enough to drive, then again that's a really good feature to have on to a machine. So let me just take this fabric out for the moment. The other thing that I would say is good to have is a top loader on your bobbin as well here. So on here you can look through this clear display and you can see how full your bobbin is. So the other way of having them is in a more mechanical machine is generally you have to remove the free arm, and here you'll have an area where you can lift a flap and pop your bobbin inside, but this is all metal or all covered on top and you can't see your bobbin, so you don't know how close you are to the end. So having a clear screen on the top here that just pops off and your bobbin just flicks out and flicks in again is a really good feature to have. So that's one thing that I would say is also good. Having a free arm as well is another good. So this is called a free arm. So we have the sewing machine bed here will click into place, and you've got a nice flat area in front of your needle where you can feed your fabric. But sometimes when you are sewing something perhaps around a trouser leg or around the cuff on a shirt, sometimes you need to have a more circular base, and you can feed your fabric onto the free arm here and sew, and the fabric will go around the back here instead in a circle, and then you'll be able to sew, and that would be nice. So a free arm option is really useful to have. So again, that's something to look out for on your machine. Consequently, you do want to have, or conversely, you want to be able to have something that does extend it, because I would find this small area in front of the needle a little too small for most of my sewing. Again, especially if you're a beginner, you want to be able to lay it nice and flat, and the extra room that the front of this free arm gives you. Sorry, it's a bit noisy to put on. This extra room here gives you a nice area to line things up and to be able to move things through. So again, whilst I want the free arm function of taking off this extra sewing machine bed surface, I actually still want to be able to put my fabric onto it. So you've got those two options. Okay, so speed control and the options. The other thing that I really like about the machine as well here is that if I start putting my stitching in here now, is what's called a needle up down button, and it's actually this button just here which has got two arrows on it. Hopefully I'll be able to zoom in for you when I edit this video. And what that means is that when you are sewing, so if I start sewing now, then at the moment when I stop, my needle always stops up. On a mechanical machine, your needle will stop anywhere in that range of function from up or down. It will stop anywhere. But with a computerised machine, generally when you stop sewing, your needle, regardless of where you are in your stitch, will always return to the up position. With the needle up down button, you can press the button, and that then puts the needle I call it into your work or into your fabric. So every time I stop now, my needle will always stop in my work. And that depends. You might say, well, why is that important? But if we're sewing round a curve, sometimes we need to do a motion called pivoting, where we take a few stitches and then we stop, we leave our needle in the work, we lift up our presser foot, we change direction slightly, we take a couple more stitches, we then lift up our presser foot, put it down again, couple more stitches, lift our presser foot, change direction and do a few more stitches, lift our presser foot, and then we can make this really lovely smooth curve as we get a bit more experienced at what we're doing. And that means then that we get this really lovely edge to our sewing depending on what we're sewing. So if I just keep going across, and of course you can still do the same pivoting where you go and then you just change direction 90 degrees, that's fine. But what I want to just show you is that every single time I take my foot off the pedal, this needle is stopping in my fabric, and you don't need it necessarily as a beginner, but you're going to need that to elevate. If you don't have that function, let me just take this out and let me just show you. There's my lovely circle on there, so that's my stitched circle. If we go and we don't use that function, then when we're stitching, and if we try to change direction, we've either got to pull the fabric and put pressure on the fabric and everything distorts, or we try to lift the presser foot when we've not got any fabric in, when we're not in the right place, and without anchoring that fabric down, you'll find that your stitches become quite disjointed, and I'm not even exaggerating what to do. And then what happens is you get these little zigs and zags in your work when you're sewing like this, because you've not put your needle in your work. Conversely, you can also use your what's called the hand crank, which is this, and you can put your needle into your work when you're sewing. So if you're sewing, oh, where's my threads gone? Let's get those at the back. So when you're sewing and you want to stop, you then can use your hand crank here to then move your needle into the work every single time before you start to change direction. But you know, that still is an acceptable way to do it, but hopefully I've just demonstrated why it's much easier to have that button or that function where your needle always does stop in your work when you're sewing. So that's another thing that I really like to do. So we've got the speed, we've got the free arm, we've got the needle up down button as well. And that is a button that I've found generally only comes on a computerised machine. But as soon as you get into a computerised machine with your display, then generally that needle up down function is there. And I use that so much in all of my sewing. It really is a boon to have. The other thing that I want to say about having as well, and if you've had an older machine, you may not realise that this is possible now, but is a needle threader. So a needle threader is this little button just here that comes down. And what happens is that as that comes down, then a little, I'll tell you what, let me just change the angle of the camera and I'll be able to show you a little bit better. Hold on one second. Okay, so what I'm talking about is this little button just here, which is called a needle threader. And so as I bring that down, there's a little section in here. Let me just get something to point with rather than my big fingers. So down here, there's a little wire loop that as you go down, just unthread that for a second so you can see. As you bring this down, this little wire loop here goes in and through the eye of the needle, just in there. Then what you can do is you can just put the thread behind the guide, and then as you release the button, there's a loop that's formed on the back there. If you can see just there, excuse my poorly finger, just there, and you can then pull it through. But how much quicker is that? And if I just show you how quickly I do it when I do it properly at full speed, if I just show you how quickly I can do that at full speed, that's so much easier to change your thread cut, your threads. And as I say, you can get so quick at doing it, and it takes all of the pain out of having to lick the end of your thread and then trying to get it through your needle. So a needle threader is one of those things that's a bit of a nuisance to use, because at first it feels a bit clunky because you have to sort of bring your lever down so that it can swing through your needle. Then you have to use both hands to hold on to your thread in order for the thread to catch and to make the loop at the back. And then you've got to just release that. Sometimes you have to push it just down slightly in order for it to release from the little bit of wire and then pull it through. But if you can master this, and it is a bit like learning a new remote control, it's one of those things you just have to go through the pain barrier with it, but once you've done it, it works really well. It really is worth having a needle threader on your machine, and actually I wouldn't now buy a machine without one, because I think especially as we get older, perhaps with our eyes failing, or just for the speed and the frustration of trying to get your needle threaded, it's just so much easier to use that. So needle threader also is the other thing that I would suggest that you have. So I've just run through those features. I know it sounded like there was going to be lots more, and there isn't straight away. So long as you've got the needle up down function on your machine, and you've got the needle threader, and you've got the speed control, and you've got the clear top bobbin, those are the and on the free arm, that's the 5 things that I would suggest that you look for if you're looking at buying a new machine. Now, just to put all of this into context, the machine that I'm showing you now was about £300, and that was bought 5-6 years ago, as I said. But it, you know, in terms of a workhorse, it really has been really good. It is a Janome. It's called an SMD 3000. I'll put that on the screen for you. I don't even know if they make those anymore. I think it was a specific model to a company called Sewing Machines Direct, to which I'm not affiliated. And so I just used that company because they were online. They gave a really good price. They do a nice delivery service. It was free delivery, and it was free next day delivery, I think. And so it was and I got a free quilting table, and I got a thread pack of about 50 threads with it as well, all different colours. And actually I'm still using some of those now, so they were really useful to have. But I'm not sort of trying to boast about how much I spent on the machine. I'm just trying to give you a price point so that you know. And I think that the last time that I looked, a computerised machine will start around about the £200 mark. Now that might again be more than you were hoping to spend on a machine, but I really think that if you are able to stretch your budget, or if you're able to wait a few months later, perhaps there's been a birthday, perhaps there's been Christmas, perhaps you've just been able to save up a bit more money, then if you're able to go in at this level of machine, especially if you've been using a more basic one first and you've been finding that you've got the sewing bug and you love it, then I really think it will be a machine that will set you in good stead. I'm not saying this exact machine, I'm saying that a machine with those features will stand you in good stead. I do try and stay away from the machines that look more toy-like. I know you can get nice Barbie pink ones or nice turquoisey blue ones that look very, very basic and functional, but they'll still cost you 50, 60, maybe 70 pounds, depending on where in the world you are and what country you're in. And I just think that if you're able to just stretch your budget just that little bit further, and just wait a little bit longer, you would then actually get a machine that will last you for years and that you're not going to outgrow. Because even with my sewing now, and I do YouTube videos, as you've probably seen, I've got over 200 YouTube videos and over nearly 2,500 subscribers now, and all of my videos are filmed using this machine, and it really has stood me in good stead, and I do just such a variety of projects with it. So I'm open to asking you any questions that you've got about a machine. I've wanted to do sort of a basic video about what I like about my machine as well. And there's lots of questions. I mean, in the days gone by, it used to be a Singer machine was the best, you know, and I think that those positions have changed slightly now. Bernina is still considered to be the Rolls-Royce of machines, I do believe that. Juki is considered to be the workhorse, but Brother and Janome are really good too. Singer I'm not so keen on personally, just my personal opinion. I'd rather go with a Janome or a Brother machine. I think my first one was a Brother machine, and my mum bought me that one for my 15th birthday, and I swapped that one for this one, as I say, 5 or 6 years ago. So I had the other one for like 20 years. I didn't use it every day, and I didn't use that as much as I use this one, but it just in terms of how much it lasted me. So it's a real investment, I think, as well. So that's what I'm just trying to say. If you're able to just push yourself a little, or just hold on for a while so you can save up a little bit more, and to jump in and get the machine that looks for these features, or if you can't manage that just yet, as many as those features as you can possibly get. Or look at the second-hand market. If you go to somebody who repairs machines, they might have a machine that has been swapped out for something a little bit more high spec. If somebody's got a little bit more of a budget to spend, then a good second-hand machine, again from a reliable source, would be a good way of getting those sorts of features without breaking the bank for you. So anyway, just my thoughts as somebody who sews probably every single day and has done for most of the last 5 years, then I would strongly recommend you look for a machine with those features. And if you fancy having a look around my channel and having a look at the types of things that I get up to, then you'd be very welcome. And if you'd like to be a subscriber, again, you'd be very welcome. And I'd look forward to any comments you've got as well. Hopefully you agree. I know you can get onto thread cutters. I've not gone as far as thread cutting yet, but I use my threads for gathering and also for tying off so that I get a really neat finish at the end. So there's just some things that will take you even further that some other people will say, I couldn't possibly live without. And it's all just such a personal choice. But for me, these are the things now that I would look for in any machine, as somebody who does a lot of sewing, because and actually who teaches other people who've contacted me and asked me they wanted to have a go at sewing. So I've got an 8-year-old girl called Catherine who's sewing with me at the moment, and she's just delightful. But she's just had a new machine for Christmas, and those are the features that we've got for her. We've skipped, she's only 8, and we've skipped all of the Barbie pink ones and all of the gimmicky ones, and we've gone straight for a machine that should last her through all of her junior school, all of into senior school, and through into university as well. So that's the hope, and that's what I would like to kind of pass on to you. So just my thoughts, just my tuppence worth. Obviously you don't need to take any notice of me, but if you wanted some pointers, then I hope that that's been helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you on my channel sometime. Take care everybody, happy stitching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.